I'll shoot straight with you. I've seen both types of healing, and I've seen both types of healing in my own life. In the introduction, I told you that 2 years ago, I was really in horrible shape. I had low energy levels. I couldn't sleep through the night. I could crash, ironically, anytime during the day. I had digestive issues. I had blood in my stool every time that I used the bathroom, number 2. It's a lot of information, maybe more than what you wanted to hear, but it's just the reality of where I was at. And maybe you can relate to having diarrhea every single day, which is really not normal. I had shortness of breath, even though I could at any time go run 6 or 8 miles. It was odd because I could exercise and do quite well, but I could never really get the weight to come off. My bones would creak at night when I got up in the middle of the evening, and I tell you this, I was actually aging really, really fast until I made the decision to walk in Therapuo, not even knowing at the time what I was actually doing. I was just trying to lose some weight because I looked really big. Remember that faith chart where I showed you earlier in the book? That last category, we walked through full faith, no faith, total faith, partial faith. And at the bottom, I said sometimes backed up by other people's faith, not even your own. And then there's this category that says sometimes backed up by action. That's what I saw in my life. As I began taking action and choosing to lose weight, I actually started walking some things out and saw immediate changes. Instantly, I was able to sleep through the night. Instantly, the digestive issues, all of them were totally gone. There were other things that happened and happened over time. My energy levels increased steadily and continued increasing steadily. Don't get me wrong, I can crash at any time during the day, but right now I can choose when that happens, if you know what I mean. I got stronger and more physically fit over time. My thinking over time became sharper, became more deeper, richer, fuller. I was able to put together and process ideas in a whole different level of a way. My muscle and joint pain, it diminished pretty quickly, and then steadily it kept on declining until it was totally gone. In other words, in my own life, what I saw was Iomai and Therapuo. They both happened as I started walking out a lifestyle of health and wholeness. You see, here's what I'm getting at. Point number 8 is this. We were designed to choose life and to live well. Over and over in the Old Testament, throughout Deuteronomy, Moses actually preaches that. He says, hey, choose life. He says, hey, you can go this way with your finances and amass a lot of debt, but don't choose life. He says, hey, you could go this way with your relationships, but don't. Treat your neighbors and treat these other people that you work for in a certain way. Choose life. He says, hey, you could do parenting this way. You could offer your kids up to the fire, but don't do that. Choose life. And I think somehow in health and wellness, the same is true. You can totally rack and rule your body with a whole bunch of stuff, but you also have the opportunity to choose life. Now, remember in the Garden of Eden, I said that there were plants that were there, seeds were given for food and for medicines and for healing. This happened before sin ever came. And I often thought, well, why is healing there in the garden before sin is ever in the equation? And people often told me, and I thought to myself, maybe God was making provision in the beginning, knowing that at some point we were going to sin and we were going to need health, we were going to need healing. Here's the only problem with that, though, is when you look into the book of Revelation 22, verse 2, it says the leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nations. The leaves of the tree are for the Therapuo of the nations. In other words, even after the effects of sin are gone and relationships are restored and people are in harmony with each other and in harmony with their Heavenly Father, and after all the chaos and the causes of dying are gone, people still have access to choosing to walk in health and wellness. And here's what maybe I'm putting together about all of it, is that health and wellness is a choice, just like intimacy. You see, in the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve weren't robots. They weren't just automatically connected to God. God gave them a choice to walk in relationship with Him. They could choose to be in relationship or they could choose to not be. And in fact, it's one evening. They used to meet Him in the cool of the evening. And it's one evening when He would walk in the cool of the garden with them and they chose not to show up for that meeting, that He looked and He noticed something was wrong. They had partaken of the fruit that they were not supposed to take of. They were designed to choose intimacy. Even now, we have to choose intimacy. I mean, you could say it like this, like on the cross, Jesus dies and He restores and reconciles us to our Heavenly Father. And so the effects of sin are gone. That's an iomai, where you're instantly restored, you're instantly connected, but at the same time, you must choose the therapeuo. You must choose to consistently walk out that relationship with your Heavenly Father. Not to earn it. It's already been paid for. But to choose to walk out the experience of it. In some way, health and wellness is the same. Like it says on the cross, by His stripes, you're healed. Psalms 103:3 says that He heals all your diseases. He heals all the effects of all of it. It's an iomai, yet at the same time, you and I get to choose to walk out therapeuo. And as we walk out the therapeuo, the experience of it all comes together. As I was preparing to teach this to you, I thought about something. I thought about the lottery. Now think about the lottery for a second. The average person that wins the lottery makes $40,000 a year. And then all of a sudden, they have access to, in many cases, hundreds of millions of dollars. In other words, what they have is they have a financial iomai. They have a financial instantaneous miracle. The stats are this, though. Within 18 months, 70% of those people will have to go back to working that $40,000 a year job. In other words, within 18 months, all the hundreds of millions of dollars, the iomai, the financial miracle, will be gone. And the reason is because they didn't therapeuo the money. They didn't steward the financial miracle. I'm wondering in some ways if maybe healing is the same. Now think about it like this. Maybe you or maybe somebody you know, they had a miracle happen to them. They were physically restored. They were physically rejuvenated. Everything changed. And then they, quote, lost the healing. Was it that the miracle didn't happen? Or is it that they didn't, or you or I didn't walk out the therapeuo, the experience of stewarding the miracle? You see, in my story, I'm convinced of this. I'm convinced that as I chose to walk in health and wellness, even not knowing what I was doing, as I chose it, the iomai and the therapeuo came, and all of the symptoms that I had disappeared. However, if I stopped exercising, if I started eating junk, I believe that in time, all of the symptoms would return. The weight would return, the symptoms would be back, the bones would creak, I wouldn't be sleeping through the night, I'd be shaking while I'm walking, and the digestive issues would return. It wouldn't be because the miracle never happened. It would be because I chose not to walk out the therapeuo of the experience of the miracle that I received. Do you see the difference?